Okay. So we're gonna do a little deviation from what the normal class has been. We've been doing it in continuation, and we're right now in the Gospel of Mark. But we're gonna do a little deviation. This is something God has placed in my heart for like, I don't know, like 5 months now, and I hadn't had an opportunity to share it, but apparently this is the night, and you guys are the lucky ones or not so lucky ones, depending on how this thing goes. So tonight's subject, we're going to talk about we who wrestle with God, from Jacob to Israel. And this is kind of important, although this is something that normally doesn't much apply, especially like Latinos. This double applies to Dominicans, that we don't have that much meaning in terms of the names. Like, we don't find the meaning of names, right? We don't think about that. We just, if it sounds nice, that's it, right? If it sounds nice, we're like, yeah, okay, we'll name it. Here's a question, here's an icebreaker. Do you know the meaning of your name? Yeah. Well, isn't that something because we're Christians now? Because we kind of have an understanding of the Bible, that we know that in biblical times, names had meaning. So maybe, but did you know that since you were like small? What your name, man? Okay. No, but okay. So they mixed both together. Okay. But like you know what Mary means. Okay. No, not necessarily a biblical meaning. It's not going that route, but it's like you know what it means, because the names have meaning. Okay. Like, for example, I named my daughter Emma Sophia, and it was Emma because you have friends. Rachel and Ross had Emma. That name, we loved it. But so I was like, wait a minute. But I'm Christian, though. I got to find out what that name means. So we Googled the meaning of the name, and it means energy. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And also, since she was going to be the first girl from the family, because up to that point, my brothers and sister was just boys. And she was the first girl. Like, it had to be, she also had to have my mom's name. And my mother's name was Sophia. Well, her name was Esperanza Sofia. So I was like, well, I can't double E her. We can't put an Emma Esperanza. That kind of don't sound right. So Emma Sofia got a better swing to it. Like, it sounds better. And then when I found out what Sophia means, it means wisdom. It means wisdom. So I was like, oh, that's kind of a good combo right there. Like, she's energy and wisdom at the same time. So I was like, okay, that's a good combo. And that's what we declared her to be. And that's exactly what she is. That's exactly what she is. So why am I going with this little tangent? Is because names, especially in biblical times, were very important, because they were basically declaring the person you was going to be. So you find out what your name means? It's called fragrance. Oh, okay. Fragrance. Okay. Yeah. My name has actually two meanings, because of Hebrew. But the actual meaning of the name, not what it meant for your parents by naming you. Because, for example, they named me Ariel because my dad had a friend named Ariel, so he was like, oh, that name. Yeah, it is. And it's in the Bible, actually. No, not necessarily. But the thing is that in Hebrew, the Hebrew language is very rich in meaning, but very short in terms of how to, like, for example, the Psalms, we got 150 Psalms, and it's like the largest portion of the Bible. The Hebrew Psalms is actually shorter. And it's not because we added stuff to it. It's just that in order to make it make sense, we had to make all those letters. But actually, one little letter in Hebrew means like 20 different things. So that's why in our version it seems larger. Our version seems larger, but it's actually short. Like, when you get the meaning, it's short. So my name, for example, is Ariel, and my name is in the Bible, and and it's Hebrew. And no, not intentional. Like I was saying, like, they named me Ariel because my dad's friend was named Ariel. So it was like, oh, that's a cool name, so let's put him Ariel. He didn't thought it through. But now and I hated the name because of the Little Mermaid. Oh, I got bullied like you wouldn't believe. Like, yeah, but it so happens that as I was growing up, that redheaded half fish was running around and make my life a living hell. So I hated the name. But when I got a biblical dictionary and I found out what the name meant, I was like, I'll keep it. The name means house of God, in line of God. When I found that meaning, yeah, I'll keep it. I'll keep it. Like, see, no, but that's what, but that's what I'm saying though. Like, that's the difference between nowadays or back when our parents' days and back in biblical days. We just give names now because they sound nice, but we don't like investigate the meaning of the name. Whereas in biblical times, the name that they gave you, they were like declaring that over your life. They were like, "You're this." Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what was in the Bible. Yep. No, but I thought that jealousy could just be. So, jealousy. Then I ended up finding out that it was. Yeah, it's a biblical name. Yeah. So, like I was saying, most of us are just have, and like I was saying also in the beginning, Dominicans especially, they like to combo those names and make it like now a weird combination of names that it's just like when you see that in an ID, I'm like, I can't pronounce this. Yeah, yeah, but as I stated again, in biblical times, the names were very purposeful. Yeah, yeah. I mean, now they're stickler more to tradition. Well, probably descendants from the tribe of Levi. Yep. Okay, so he's a Levite. Okay, so he's a descendant of Levites because I mean, the tribes that we know that's still around is like just Judah, Benjamin, and Levites. The rest of them are like we don't know what happened. But yeah, but the three tribes that are still around that you can actually go back are those three. The other rest of them are like we don't know. But going back to this, we were talking about the names, right? The importance of what having a name was and how a name marked you. So we're going to talk about this name, Jacob. Now, if you know a little bit about your Bible, you know that name is no bueno. That's not a good name. And we're going to find out a little bit about that now. So we're going to read. I didn't put the whole verse because it's a lot, but this whole context is important to read it fully. And I'm going to read it on Genesis chapter 25, verses 19 to 28. And it's important to read all this context because it shows you what God's plan was and yet what man saw. And it shows that although God has a plan, that necessarily means that it has to go in a certain way that how we would think it would go. You know, we'll see that now. Okay, if you want to, yeah, go ahead.
This is the genealogy of Abraham's son. Abraham conceived, but the children struggled together within her, and she said, "If all is well, why am I like this?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, two people shall be separated from your body. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." So when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. Yeah. So the boys grew, and Esau was skillful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
Okay, so that's a lot of things to cover there, but we all know the story of Abraham, right? Abraham didn't have any kids until he was 100. And just so happens that the family in which Isaac was married to was his family. They were kin. So Rebekah, his wife, was actually his cousin because Rebekah is a daughter from one of Abraham's brothers. So they were actually cousins. And they got married. So, and it mentioned Laban, and Laban's going to play out a little later in Jacob's life. So what happened? Isaac saw the situation that happened with his dad. He had him old. And it seems to be something in this family that all the women are barren. Because that happened much later also with Jacob, with Rachel. Mm-hmm. Maybe they just like to play with fire. Anyway. Yeah. Back then, no, there wasn't no law back then. There was no law back then. So the thing is, Isaac was like, well, we're going to nip this in the bud right now. And he prayed about it, and God gave him twins. God gave him twins. But as you were reading right now, the problem was she felt there was a struggle inside of her. It was a battle. And there's other versions that say, well, why am I going through this? I'd rather die. There's another version that says that she was like, I'd rather die because this is wild what's going on inside of me. So the Bible says she inquired of the Lord. So this is not what we just read here. These are not what she thought. This is not what she thought. This is what God declared to her. You might read that again on 23? Okay, let's stop it right there. So we have God, not a man, not other circumstances outside or whatever. We have God textually telling her straight up, the younger is going to be the master of the older. Is the older is going to serve the younger? No, but we're going to get to all that stuff later. Don't worry about it. But what we're saying is God had already established that the second one was going to be the one that was going to be blessed, and that the older was going to serve the younger. Okay, God spoke, right? But what we read later on 24, continue there.
But with her days, indeed.
Stop it right there first. Okay, Esau, that means hairy, and he was a redheaded. So this kid already came out a little mutated. Because you imagine a redheaded, all hair, all over his place. I'm like, yeah, he looked like Goku. So he's all over the place. So like, okay, this is weird. So immediately they started naming stuff. Like again, they're very purposeful on how they put names. So he was like, oh, he's hairy, so let's put him hairy. Esau. So yeah, he's hairy. So he's hairy, so they named him Esau because Esau in the Hebrew means hairy. So continue on 26. Okay, right. Let's stop it right there. So we got here the definition of what Jacob actually means. That supplants, minds, the heel. He grasped by the heel. A Hebrew idiom for he deceives or he cheats. What happens here? They see that, yeah, they thought that since Jacob was grabbing his brother by the heel, because they were fighting about who was going to be born first. So it's like, oh, this kid is a cheater. He's a cheater because he's trying to grab his brother by the heel. He's trying to pull him down. They're like, no, you ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere. So he's like, oh, he's cheating. So they call him cheater. Because Jacob doesn't literally means cheater, but the literal meaning is he who grabs by the heel. So that's a Hebrew idiom for cheater. So basically, they call him cheater. Do you imagine that your parents name you cheater? Okay, but why was he a cheater? Because here's the thing. Didn't God just say, like a few months before when she was inquiring why there was this problem in her belly, didn't God just say that the younger was going to rule over the older? So already God had spoken and said something about this baby. And she already was aware that this kid was going to be something special because they were twins, and that was a problem in terms of who was going to be the first one, because in that culture, the firstborn gets it all. The firstborn gets it all. So already God had already foretold her, forget about the first one. It's the second one is going to be the boss. Why? Because God spoke it. But they were so close-minded in their thoughts. They were like, well, it wasn't meant to be. So he's trying to cheat, so let's call him cheater. He was trying to cheat. So he was the second one he was born, so he's a cheater. And by doing so, whether they were aware of it or not, they condemned him to that type of lifestyle. No, they called it. That's the whole thing, because how can you call a baby a cheater? I mean, do you even know that he was thinking about what he was doing? Yet, in their culture, he was like, he's a cheater. Yeah. So they declared something over his life. Like, isn't there any family members in around your family that you just like, yeah, I know he's going to be the black sheep. He's no good. Like, even when he was a kid, you're like, yeah, he ain't going to be no good. And then it ends up, well, we called it. That boy's been more in jail than anything. I mean, wasn't that kind of like a condemnation that you send directly to that kid? I mean, he hadn't done nothing yet. I mean, yeah, he showed some proclivity, but he hadn't done nothing yet to warrant that. But everybody was just willing to throw that condemnation at that kid. So we got here Jacob that they call him a cheater. Jacob is called a cheater. And man, did he live it. He lived it out perfectly, because the first thing he does, since he was born, Jacob was declared a thief and a cheater, sadly proven to be worthy of the name by his actions. And now we're going to see a little chart here. He starts immediately, first order of business, he steals his brother from his birthright. He steals his brother's birthright. And by doing that, that's where Esau gets the name Edom, because Edom means red. So he gave him a red hot stew. And because he sold his firstbornship to Jacob for that red stew, they called him Edom, because you love the red. Well, he was also a redhead, but he was like, oh, I love everything red. So then we see that he deceives his father. And this was co-signed by the mother too. That's the one thing that people kind of like to forget. That was co-signed by the mother. Matter of fact, that was the mother's idea. She was the one that, and he was like, well, how are we going to do it though? Because like, I'm listening. The mother came with the idea like, yes, mother, I'm listening. Yes. And then you can tell when we get to this part, this kind of thing runs in the family. Because then he has his encounter with God after he hit this low. He has his encounter with God. And I would dare say when he had that encounter with God, he was like trying to straighten up his life, because he probably realized, yeah, I've been backsliding all this time now. Like I've been playing people left and right. I don't want to play no more games. I'll leave that to Nintendo. I don't want to be playing no more games. I want to get my life straight. But then, because actions have consequences, and he sold a lot of this deception, he ended up in the hands of the player of players, Laban, that worked him for free for 20 years, cleaned him, fleeced him, cleaned him. You know what working for free for 20 years is? 20 years working for free. He did not get paid. The only reason those people didn't go hungry because they were Laban's kids. There was the two wives that Jacob had out of Laban was Laban's daughters. Was the only reason why they didn't go broke, because their dad kept them. But Jacob wasn't making no money. So Jacob went through the consequences of his actions by deceiving. So he was in a very low spot at this time. But now we're going to get to this part right here. We're going to get there now. Now this is the gut check. Do we also walk as Jacob did, condemned to what others have stated about us? Yeah. Like if we just receive negative things from other people, especially if it were our parents. No, not now, but there was a time, just like Jacob just lived out that deceitful cheater life, because that's what his parents called him. Yeah. Yeah. And doesn't this happen to you? Like there's some people that you probably haven't seen like in 30 years, and they meet you now again and they think you're still that person from 30 years ago. And they haven't realized that you've been through a whole life and you've been through a lot of stuff, and you probably have some traces of that person from back in the past, but you are not that same person anymore, because you've learned from your mistakes and you're correcting those mistakes, and you're not that person. You're not saying that those things didn't happen. They did, but you owned up to them and you are a better person now, but you cannot be taken into that same judgment that you were that person who you were back then. But they don't see it that way though, right? They probably don't see it that way. They probably see you just, oh, this stupid kid, that same kid from back in the day. But this does happen. Like, how do we walk with that condemnation, with that name call, that tag that they put on us? We do. But now let's go here in Genesis when we're going to that encounter part. Genesis chapter 32, from verses 22 to 23 to 23. Okay, I read this part, although you might think, well, what this has to do with the story. Well, that name Jabbok is kind of important, because this is something I've noticed about the Bible. They always like give you a little tells of what things that are about to happen. So Jabbok, the Hebrew word for wrestle, is abak, which sounds a lot like the river, the name of the river. This has led many scholars to believe that the Jabbok River was named after Jacob's famous wrestling match with God. So when the writer was put the name Jabbok, it was like letting you know, ding, 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 something's about to happen. So the river's already named this, but it was named after the fact. It was named after the fact. So giving you that name is kind of letting you know something about to go down. If you know the Hebrew language, it was like giving you a little foreshadowing, if you will, of what was about to go down. Continue 24, 25. You want to continue? Okay. Genesis 32 verses 24, 25. Okay. Now, there's a lot of things that we can extrapolate from this because we already know the story. So, but still, there's a lot of things to see into this. Like, for example, Jacob was left alone and you know why he was left alone, and because we were reading earlier that he sent for his family. Why? Because he was about to meet his brother Esau, and you know the last time those two saw each other, did not ended up well, because that was the time where Jacob stole his blessing. Jacob stole his blessing, and Esau was like, I'm going to kill this dude. And he didn't say it like playfully. No, he was like, he's going to get got. I see this fool. I'm going to drain blood out of him. And he wasn't playing. That was the reason why Jacob had to run. So Jacob was worried. You would think, right? He was worried. So in a way, because since Jacob was a smart dude, he was like, if I send my kids first and my wife, that's going to soften the deal. Plus, I'm going to send some animals too, like an offering to calm the dude down. And then at the end, I'm going to show up. Because he ain't going to kill my kids. He's mad at me. He ain't mad at my kids. He ain't mad at my wife. Maybe if he sees my wife and kids, he's going to be like, oh, poor thing. I ain't going to leave the kids. I'm going to leave these kids orphan. I'm not going to leave these kids orphan. No, I ain't going to do that. So Jacob was smart. So he was like trying to buy some time. One thing we can realize about Jacob, and let's go back to the chart. Let me go back to the chart. All these things that Jacob did, he did them with, I would dare say, some sort of good intention. You know why? And this is what we were reading also, and we're going to get to that later. Jacob was always seeking a blessing. He was always trying to seek a redemption for that condemnation that they gave him by that name. So his intent was always to be blessed. Because they're like, you already done cursed me by giving me the name of the cheater. You already called me cheater. So I ain't got nowhere else to go but up now. Because you already put me in rock bottom. I already started from the lowest point. So I'm only up trying to get my blessing by him being a cheater. He doesn't know how to do it any other way. So he's trying to do it by his own way. He's trying to get it in deceitfulness. So everything that he does, although his intentions are good, he wants to be blessed, he gets it the wrong way, by lying, by cheating. And again, his intentions probably were in the right place. He probably wanted, like, how many of us want to be blessed? Yeah, but, and that's a very interesting point you bring up right there. No, sometimes we want to help God. And we want to help him so bad, we will do it by any means necessary. And we got to be careful about that. First, God don't need no help. That's the first thing. God don't need no help. And if you can ask Abraham now, do you think that was a good idea, man, checking up with Hagar and getting that Ishmael? You think that was a good idea? Abraham was like, no, that's not a good idea. No. Exactly, because that's where the Muslims come from. And that created a little conflict that's been lasting like 5,000 years now. That created that little conflict now. And all because he did not want to wait on God. Because he was like, I'm getting old, Lord. He was complaining back when he was 90, and God stopped talking to him for like 10 years. Both of them are to blame because I read my Bible. I didn't see Abraham protesting. When Sarah came with the idea, I didn't see Abraham say, no, I will not do that. Abraham was like, oh, sure. Abraham was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, right? No, I mean, the problem here is deeper than that, because we actually read before when you read that Rebecca loved Jacob. Remember you read that. Rebecca loved Jacob, but Isaac loved Esau. So they already pick and choose their favorites. They already had their favorites. So Isaac already set up in his mind, I love Esau. Jacob, okay, bendito y pobre, pobrecito. He loves to live in the tent, so he doesn't want to go out. But where Esau is a man, he goes hunting. He probably did, but he was like, I don't care. He was probably like, I don't care. Okay, Esau's my favorite. That's why I mean, and you know that Esau had that intent because he told Esau, Isaac told Esau, go hunt me something. When you come back, I'm going to bless you. So he already set up his mind. He had his mind set up already. And that's why Rebecca was like, Jacob, here, come here, quick. You got to do something about this because your dad is about to bless the wrong person. They had the right intention, but they didn't. Nobody here was out looking for what God wanted. Everybody was going out for their agenda, but nobody was out here saying, what does God want? What is God's purpose? I mean, they decided long ago, even when Jacob was born, they already gave him the name cheater. So they weren't thinking about what God's purpose was. They were thinking like, oh, he a cheater. That's it. And that kind of happens with us. So life, and that's another interesting subject right there. Life sometimes gives us like the raw end of the deal, right? And you're like, but the word of God says this. But I feel that God is going to do this. And yet everything is just happening the contrary. Everything is just backwards. Not necessarily because things are happening in a certain way. That does not mean that God is not in control. So we left here. Okay. So let's go back to the wrestling match. So we already established that Jacob was left alone and he wrestled with this man. There's some people that say it was an angel. Some people, we're going to see later that some people even think that it was actually Jesus himself that was wrestling with him. That's neither here nor there because we don't know. All we know is that somebody was having a wrestling match with Jacob. It was a strong person. Yet this person saw that Jacob was not going to quit. It's not that Jacob was overpowering the dude. It's just that Jacob was not going to quit. That's one thing that we will always give Jacob points for. Dude did not quit. Dude was about getting that what he wanted. When he set his mind to it, he was like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. He was a hustler. He was like, no, until I don't see this go through, I'm not quitting. So the man, the angel, Jesus, whoever you want to call him, when he saw this, he was like, I got to put a stop to this because he's not going to quit. So he just touched him. Just touched him. A little tap. A little love tap. And the man was limping for the rest of his life. And yet, he did not quit. And here's a little illustration. I mean, they put it as an angel, but again, we don't know. Plus, I think he would have said it was an angel if he saw a dude with wings. Yes, we're going to go there. Okay, so verse 26 says, and he said, let me go for the day breaks. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Jacob was like, he was not taking no for an answer. Yeah, Jacob. Jacob was like, I'm not taking no for an answer because I would understand by this point that Jacob knew who he was wrestling with. So what is going on here? What's going on here is that Jacob has finally come to a confrontation that has taken all his life. Jacob has realized that by doing it the way that they condemned him to, being a cheater, he hasn't accomplished much. Everything that he does have was by the grace of God, but it has not been to the way he would have liked it. I mean, he was running away from his father-in-law. He was running away from his brother. He had spent over 20 years that he hadn't seen his mom and his dad, all because he was a cheater. All because they condemned him to this life, and he accepted it. He ran with it. He just was like, okay, well, you call me a cheater, I'm a cheater, okay. That's what I am then. I am that I am. But he was in this moment that he realized that he was confronting something that was bigger than him. That was something that was definitely not the norm that we had experienced up to this point. Something that he only had seen once when he had that vision of the ladder with angels going up and down. So he's realizing that this is something different. So whether he knew that this was God himself or not, or maybe he didn't know much later, a little later, he realized who it was. I mean, then because he was asking questions, spoilers. But the thing is, he was like, this is not a normal situation. I mean, I'm hurt. I'm limping. This dude ain't quitting, but I ain't quitting either because I want something. I want something. So he's like, until you don't bless me, I'm not going to let you go. This encounter marks a turning point as Jacob is forced to confront his limitations and dependence on God. The dislocation of his hip signifies a humbling and physical reminder of his encounter with the divine. When we encounter God, our defenses are down at the floor. When we have a true encounter with God, there are no longer any excuses. We can no longer stand on our own 2 feet. And that's the importance of why the hip was taken out. Because We start limping because we can't pretend to be tough when we're confronted with the real God. When we're confronted with the one true God that we cannot front anymore. We confront him in front of our family. We confront in front of our friends. We can put the front on anybody, but we can't pull the wool over God. Because with God, we are confronted with our true nature of who we really are. And this is what the point is getting to right now. And this is what I was talking about earlier. The mysterious encounter is described as a physical struggle that lasts throughout the night. The man with whom Jacob wrestles is later understood to be a divine being, often interpreted as a theophany, or a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. So there's some that believe that it was actually Jesus that was having that match with it. And that's not something out of the norm, because that's happened a lot. For example, Abraham had God eating with him in his tent. And the two angels, when they were then sent to Sodom and Gomorrah. Also, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. So this is not something that's out of the norm. This is something that's actually biblical. Now, let's go through these verses. Matthew 10, verses 34, 39. And these verses I selected because I want to be very clear of what the process of what Jacob went through. And this is Jesus telling. These are words of Christ. Matthew 10, 34 to 39 says here, I have the ESV. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Whoever loves a father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it. And whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. This kind of throws out the window those happy-go-lucky stories that we hear some preachers tell. Some preachers gives us the selling points of like, oh no, you come to Jesus, everything's going to be, everything's going to be rosy, everything's going to be peachy keen, everything's going to be just fine. You're just going to have, it's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. That's a lie from the devil. That's a whole lie. Once you come to Christ, that's when the pain begins. That's when things get real. Why? Because you're being confronted with the true reality. Because back when we were in sin, we were deceived. We were blind. We didn't know. And now that we are in the light, now we see. Yeah, because he's ticked off at us. Because he don't want us to be bouncing out of his gate. He wants to drag with him as many people as possible. And once one of us escapes, he's like, no, I ain't going to let you go. I ain't letting you go. Yeah? Oh, yeah. The thing is that this heart of ours, and when the Bible talks about heart, it talks about, it's not the organ, it's your inner being, the person who you are inside. So every time you hear that word heart, that's what it means. Your inner being, the person that you truly are inside. This heart of ours is an abyss. It is a deep, dark abyss. And we have tons of stuff buried inside of there that we are not aware of. We carry so many traumas from the past that we just bury it and ignore because we're like, I don't want to see that ugly stuff again. And we literally forget about it. Because the pain is so strong that we rather like, no, I'm going to ignore that. Just bury that under 20 tons of rubble. And I don't want to say, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. I was telling people on Sunday school that when they were cleaning up at Ground Zero in the World Trade Center, they actually found the ship because all that land that was there, that was filling land. I was actually part of the river where the World Trade Center is. It was actually riverside. There was water there. So when they were digging up, they actually found a boat from the 1700s down there. Now, do you think that they did that on purpose? No, they didn't know that thing was there. But it took that tragedy for them to dig out and clear all that terrain, and they found out that boat. What I'm trying to say with that is that you don't know what's hidden in there because if you don't know it's there, you don't know it's there. And there's a lot of stuff that's in there that we're totally unaware of, and sometimes you just lash out, and you're like, why did I lash out? What triggered me? Like I don't know. I was fine a minute ago. I was okay. I was just fine a minute ago, and then all of a sudden a little thing just hit me in the right spot, and boom, nuclear holocaust. You just explode, and everybody that's in the front just gets it. Anybody that's there just gets it. And then you ask yourself, like, what's wrong with me? Like, I was fine just a minute ago. Why did I have to lash out? Got some stuff in there. There's some stuff in there. And God has to do such a fine job. And this is what happened with Jacob. And this is the reason why I was reading this part, is to make us realize that our struggle is real, and we're going to have fights with the people that we love. And when we read these parts, I said, if you don't love your father, the word there, love, is actually, if you don't love less your parents or your kids than me. It's not that you despise them. It's not like if you hate them. No, it's like if you don't love me more than you love them. That's basically what it was saying. Not that you have to despise your kids and despise your family. You love your family, you love your kids, you love your mother, you love your father. But God comes first. God is non-negotiable. And you don't want to go through the process of finding out how non-negotiable that is. I went through it. God took away from me my wife and kid for 4 years, and that was not a pretty experience for me. That was not pretty. But God had to do it. It was like, because God was like, I got to find out where you at. I got to find out where you're standing. Our faith is tested. And we read that in the Bible and we think, oh, that sounds nice. Try living it. Try living it. When your faith is tested, it's like, all we're going to see you about that life. Jacob was testing God and showing him that he was about that life because he was limping. He was limping for the rest of his life. He was wrestling a match that he couldn't win. Yet he was like, I may not win this fight, but I ain't going to quit either. He wanted to correct that wrong. All his life, he was trying to correct that wrong. That's how I see it. I don't know if you see it that way, but if you just see his life, everything that he's been doing so far is like, I want to be blessed. I don't want to be the cheater. I don't want to be known as the cheater. I want to be blessed. Now, how I'm going to get that blessing? I got to do what I got to do. That's all he knew. Yes? Okay. Yeah. That's the NIV or Jeremiah. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes God has to allow things to happen in our lives in order for us to learn submission to him, in order for us to be submissive, because we don't like that word. We don't like to be submissive. We want things to be done, like Pastor said on Wednesday, we want it our way. We want that Burger King. We want it our way. We want things to be done our way. And that was Jacob's MO. He wanted God's blessings, but he wanted it his way. And since all he knew was cheating, like, well, we got to do what we got to do. We got to take care of business. This is how I know to get it. We're going to get it. Nobody else is going to give it to me, so I'm going to give it to me. He never stopped thinking about, like, well, God, do you want me to be blessed? Okay, so how do I go about that? No, he never thought about that. Because he was like, he probably thought, well, I'm all alone. Like, ain't nobody on Team Jacob here. Ain't nobody here on my team, so I guess I have to do it all by myself. But that was not God's MO, though. For 2 Corinthians 4, verse 7 to 12. You want to read it? Go ahead.
We who think that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh, so that death is working in us, but life in you.
There we go. God knows that we are just lumps of clay, basically. Like, he knows that we are flawed. But yet, through every difficulty that we go in life, we get stronger in him because we stop depending on our own strength. Because just as Jacob was crushed in the hip, he understood that, like the part you were just reading earlier, every step Jacob took from that moment on, he was like, I was depending on myself. I was depending on my strength. Now, I only have half the strength because only one leg works. Now I got a limp. Now I got to use a walking stick in order to walk. So now I'm only half the man I used to be. But now I get that because this handicap that I got now makes me understand that I have to lean on God and not on myself, not on my own strength. Because Jacob was just depending on his own wits, depending on his schemes, depending on every trick in the book that he knew how to play. And you can tell that experience that he had when he saw the angels coming and going up and down in the ladder, that changed him. Why? Because he was serving his uncle for 20 years. In those 20 years, he had no gain. You can probably say because, well, Laban probably had all the games on top of him. But then you find out that later on, Jacob had some games on his own for Laban. And at the end, Jacob cleaned him, took him to the cleaners. Jacob got back to his old ways. It was like, oh, two play this game too, fool. He got his money back and then some. He cleaned his uncle. So he was like, so what I'm saying is that he didn't stop his games though. Like he was trying. He was like, God, I'm trying to be a good Christian boy here, but this man ain't making it easy for me. This man has been taking me to the cleaners for 20 years, so I'm going to hit him back now. I'm going to take this opportunity. I'm going to hit him back, and I'm going to hit him hard. And boy, he hit him hard because the father-in-law was after him, was chasing him. So it's like, no, like, would you let go somebody that was working for you for free for 20 years? Just let him go all willingly like that? No, you would be like, no, you ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere. So Jacob had to run, but he was doing things on his flesh, although he did try. And that's a whole nother example right there of our lives. Like, we want, like, Lord, I want to serve you. I want to do the things right, but my flesh is in the way. My desires are in the way. And I know I can take care of business if you just close your eyes for a minute and let me handle it. You just sit down in the corner. I'll take care of this. You ain't gonna do it. You ain't gonna look. Close your eyes, close your ears. You ain't gonna be worrying about nothing. I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. But what do? We just make a bigger mess of a thing. Continue here. The struggle is spiritual. Just in the same book, chapter 10, 2 Corinthians 10, 3-5. So this is the way we should fight our battle. It's not by our own strength. We should rely on God, because we have to understand when we try to do things in our way, we're just going to create a problem, even bigger than the one that we already have. This is like, I've heard this expression before. Like, people are like, yeah, I want to give my life to Christ, but I want to fix it first. I want to get fixed first before I get myself. That's the equivalent of like, I want to get cleaned up. Like, I want to get a shower to get a shower. That don't make no sense. Like, why do you go to take a shower? Because you're dirty. So what you're saying is that you want to take a shower in order to take a shower? Like, first off, you're not the source of cleaning yourself. Yeah. I heard there was a church that was like, we're going to do a whole day of fasting, but first, let's serve ourselves a giant buffet. Let's go all out. Let's haul out. And eat like there ain't going to be no tomorrow, because literally there wasn't going to be a tomorrow, any food tomorrow. So they got to eat like animals. So the next day, of course, they fasted because they were full up to the brim. Do you think they honored God with that fasting? No. There was no honoring God there. There was no sacrifice. There was no sacrifice there whatsoever. So our struggle is spiritual. And then the next verse we're going to read is Hebrews chapter 12, verses 4-6. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 4-6. Whoever wants to read it. Go. The struggle is spiritual, but in this case, when we struggle, we have to do it spiritually, and also understand that God will allow things to happen, like that little breaking of the hip. That is God giving discipline to Jacob for all these years of just cheating. And it's not that God had any joy of dislocating his hip. It's like, you got to have a constant reminder of what your place is in life and what are the consequences of your action. Discipline God allows in order for us to understand our limitations and understand who he is and where our place is before him, and not trying to get above him or under him, but stay in the right spot that he has called us to be. Because you shouldn't be thinking too highly of yourself, and you shouldn't also be thinking too low of yourself. There's a medium spot right there. There's a juicy little spot right there that God wants you to be at. Don't think too high of yourself, don't think too low of yourself. But stay in a right spot to know that where's you're standing before God, but don't also be thinking that you're the best. You're all that. You know? There's a balance to this thing. But we also have to understand that we are disciplined by God in things that in our lives that we have done. Yes, God has forgiven us, but that does not excuse the consequences of those sins. If we have committed sins, the consequences of those sins do still linger. They're still around. They're still attached to our lives, and we will pay for it. That doesn't mean that God didn't forgive that and they even forget about it. And matter of fact, God doesn't even have that in his register anymore against us. But that doesn't erase the fact that we did it. Exactly. And yeah, the way I like to remind myself is always David. Because David, he committed a horrible sin by sleeping with Bathsheba and killing his man who was married to Bathsheba, killing him and covering up in such a nasty, deceitful way that he paid for the consequences of that for the rest of his life. But one thing that I do like about David, that he took it like a champ. When his own son dethroned him from the throne, and he had to run for his life, and people were cussing up a storm on him while he was walking away, David kept his mouth shut because he was like, I deserve this. I deserve this. I made this monster. I made this monster. I have to pay for what I did. So how contrary some of us, when things go bad, we're like, why, God? Why? Like, can we just stop for a moment and think like, wait a minute, what did I do? How did I open the door for this thing to happen to me? What did I do in order to, what are the consequences of my actions? Now, we're going to get to the juicy part here. Genesis chapter 32, going back to our story, verse 27 and 28. Genesis 32, 27, 28. Anybody wants to read it? Go ahead. Man, so this moment is when God finally calls him out. Everything up to this point was like just an appetizer. Even the breaking of the hip was just all an appetizer. So why do you think, I mean, first off, doesn't God know who Jacob is? Why he's asking his name? Like, he already know who he's fighting. Why he's got to ask his name? You already know. God knows everything. But yet you find this in the Bible over and over again. God is always asking questions. You always find this, you're like, you already know. Why are you asking? Why are you asking? But because the question is not so much for God to know, it's for God is asking that question in order to you reveal your own heart. So this question is, what is your name? God is asking, how are you being identified as? How do you identify as? So Jacob had to say the word Jacob, basically saying cheater. Yeah, I'm cheater. Jacob had to recognize that identity that has been placed on him, although that was not God's original plan. How do I know that wasn't God's original plan? Because he already done told his mother that the younger was going to be the ruler of the older. So God's original plan wasn't Jacob to be a deceiver, or a cheater, or a liar. He was supposed to be a ruler. So God is correcting this issue right now. This is God's moment. And why it took God so long? Well, he had the right moment for this instrument to be prepared. The discipline that we just read in Hebrews had happened up to this point. That too. But there's also Jacob's part playing in this as well. His stubbornness. He running away from his problems, running away from his identity. Yes, surrendering to that title. He was like, he identified himself and acted as the cheater. So when God is asking him for his name, he's like, what is your identity? How do you identify yourself as? So he had to answer what he's always been told. His name, cheater. So God was like, no longer you'll be called Jacob. You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. Now, do you know what Israel means? Do you know what Israel means? This is one of the meanings. Having power with God, or God's fighter. That's a name change. That boy got an upgrade. Boy was walking around with an Alcatel old phone. Now he all of a sudden got an iPhone 17. That boy got upgraded immediately. That's a compliment. Having power with God, or God's fighter. We're going to see a little bit also here. Another definition. The name Israel means he struggles with God, or God prevails, signifying transformation in Jacob's identity and relationship with God. This blessing is a testament to Jacob's perseverance in the grace of God in acknowledging his struggle. God changed his identity. And the cool thing about this is that after this, you don't hear Jacob deceiving no more. Like, look it up in the Bible. After this, I mean, they still kept calling him Jacob. But this was kind of God's name. And by the way, what ended up being the name of the nation afterward? Israel. Because maybe sometimes God calls us, and it's not necessarily for our sake. It's for our sons or daughters, because we are so limited to thinking about, what am I going to get out of this? What am I? And we don't understand we're just another link in the chain. We're just a continuation of the story that was already set apart years and beyonds before. We're just the next chapter. And guess what? Our kids are the continuation. So it is our job, in order to make sure that that next generation gets something better than what we had. It has a better connection to God than what we had. I always say this testimony, and I'm going to keep repeating it again. when I had a lot of issues with my dad growing up. And then when I got older, when I found out that he necessarily did not have the greatest childhood. Matter of fact, he had no childhood because he had no connection with his father. His father didn't recognize him as his son until he was like 36. And his father never even said once that he loved him. Never. And that was a cranky old man. Let me tell you something. And I'm not even saying like, no, like a cliche. No. This man he was no bueno. That grandfather of mine, I would dare say, no, I would not dare say he was racist. He was a racist. Like straight up. Like he hated Haitian. Like hated him like straight up. And it was not cool. I got to see that old man. I mean, God forgive me, but when he died, I didn't feel a thing. God forgive me, but it's true. I didn't feel a thing. I was like, well, that happened. I mean, I wasn't glad either. I wasn't glad, but I was like, well, that's what he sold. That's exactly what he sold. But my dad was a whole different story. That my dad was shambles. He was broken. Because although that man did not give him any love, that was his dad. That was his dad. And when in the moment that I saw my dad break down, I immediately got it. I was like, oh, he's just carrying the chain from whatever happened to that old man. He was just carrying that same load, and he was passing it to me. And at that moment, I was like, no, this stops with me. At that moment, I was like, no, this is not gonna happen to me. So at that moment, I made up my mind. I had not met my wife at that point. It would have been like maybe 15 years later. But I was like, no, when I meet my wife and when I have my kids, I'm not gonna pass all this garbage to them. I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna be loving. I'm gonna show them love. I'm gonna show them care, because I'm not gonna pass this garbage. I'm not gonna pass all this loads of crap that's been in this family for years. I'm not gonna pass this over. Yeah. Because we're trying to purify ourselves with the Word of God, with getting into His presence, by reading, by just learning about Him and being in His presence. And we're trying to remove all that stuff. So some of us have that Jacob identity, that this is what we've been called. This is what we've been identified as. I guess I'll be the bad guy then. Like, haven't you been thought about that? Like, you're like, okay, you wanted me to be the bad guy? I'll be the bad guy. Okay. No problem. I'll take that identity. No problem. Yeah. You go Tony Montana on them. Go Tony Montana on them. Scarface. And you just accept it. It was like, okay, that's what you want me to be. I'll be that. And there's a problem with that, because it's not what people call us to be. It's what God has called us to be. It's what God has called us to be. It's what God sees in us. And Jacob had lost that because God called him one thing, and yet life, his family, circumstances called him a cheater. And he just accepted it. So he was, maybe knowingly or unknowingly, this match was just a manifestation of what has happened in all his life. All his life, he was fighting God. And that's what the name of the class is, wrestling. We Who Wrestle With God. Because guess what? Every one of us here has had a wrestling match, or maybe you're still having that wrestling match with God. Each and every one of us are still going through that match with God. We probably didn't have that encounter that we lasted a whole night, or maybe not be limping. But all of us are having that match with God. Why? How do I say that? Well, are you resisting God's calling in your life? Are you not finding out what God's will is for your life? Or are you just simply accepting things as they are because it is what it is? And we don't know, or maybe we don't realize that by giving up, by not doing anything, we're actually submitting to fear. How is that? Well, if you don't, because this walk in Christ is very proactive. You have to walk in it. That's why the Bible says you have to be doers of the word and not hearers only. The Bible, the Word of God demands action from us, not just like, oh yeah, this is a nice word. I accept it. Yes, thank you, God. No. Okay, you accept it. How are you accepting it? What are you doing to accept it? What actions are you taking? Do you separate time with God? Do you pray? Do you get into your word? Are you fasting? Are you doing something in order to get, like, do you hear Christian podcasts, for example? Are you doing something to get into His presence? Are you trying to draw near to God? Because it's amazing. And I'm not trying to knock on anybody that watches TV or your TV series. I'm not one of those crazy people that just like, oh, that's sin. No. it's entertainment. You do what you got to do. You want to enjoy yourself. It's your time. You earn your time. You do what you want to do. But I find it so interesting. Like, for example, my daughter, she was watching Stranger Things, the finale, and she was a mush crying over that ending. She was bawling. And I was telling her, and I'm not gonna spoil the ending, so I'm not gonna go into it. But I was like, she was not accepting certain things that happen. I was like, baby, life is all about acceptance. You're learning how to take things as they go. But independently of all that, I was like, look at the passion she has over this. And when we talk about let's go and pray, she's like, oh God, no. I'm like, baby, it's just 5 minutes. I don't want to. Like, it's like, what is life and what is like, it's not bad, it's not good either. It's just, it is, it's entertainment. And I don't think it's evil or satanic or whatever. It's just entertainment. It's there. You can watch it or you don't watch it. You do whatever you want. But the fact that we put so much invest so much emotional stock into a thing, and we don't do that with God. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because it gives you like a structure, because when you read it, you're like, Jesus, you could be whatever it is in your brain. But yeah, because no, they take a lot of liberties in The Chosen. They take a lot of creative liberties, because there's a lot of things in the series that happen that they're not in the Bible. A bunch of stuff. Yeah, like the whole Thomas and his wife thing. That's no register of that in the Bible whatsoever. Yeah, no, I'm not knocking on The Chosen. Like what, like Jesus himself said, like whatever is for me, go ahead. Like that's talking about Jesus. No. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool for the uninitiated. Like, if you're not, and it's also for the ones that know the Bible. Like, that's a cool thing. Like, oh, look, they're talking about my favorite book. Story from my favorite book. Cool. And they took some creative liberties. Okay, but the gist of it is there. That's the important thing. The gist of it is there. Like, the important stuff is there. That's the important thing. And in that series, it's touching a lot of people, so you can't knock on that. But the thing is, why do we focus and give so much? Like, I'm sorry for the sports fans out there, but like, there's some people that love their sports team so much that when they lose, it's like the end of the world. It's like the world end. They're like, no. They even they start screaming at people, don't talk to me. So, and look, I'm not saying loving your team is a bad thing. I'm not saying that. But taking it to that extreme? Yeah, that was just the excuse. That's the thing. Like, that's the thing, though. Like, we have these things that we attach ourselves to, but they're simply an excuse when bad things manifest inside of us. It's not because of the sports team or the TV series or what have you. That's just the excuse. The problem is inside. Like, that dude has some issues. Like, if you're going to lash out like that over a sport team, no, there's more than that, obviously. But what I'm saying is that, how do we let trivial things like that get a hold of us in such a way, and we don't have that passion for God? Like, we don't have that passion for God. We like I know some diehard, like, let's just throw a team out there. Let's say the Knicks. There's a lot of Knicks fans right here, all right? And it's been a minute since we've won one, but we did won the season championship. But the thing is, what happens if the Knicks don't make it again? Is it the end of the world? Is it the end of the world? No. Like, your life is going to continue. It's not the end of the world. Like, it's not the end of the world, though. Like, you can love your team. You can cheer for them. You can buy your jerseys. Do what you do. There's no problem with that whatsoever. Now, if you're going to get to the point that thing is going to control your life, there's something wrong with you. Yes, exactly. And we don't get the correlation of it because we are so built in to worship something. It's driven in our DNA that we just want to worship something. It's driven inside of us that, like, no, I got to give this. I have to. But we don't go there for some reason. Okay, let's continue reading, because this is also important. Genesis 32, 30 to 31 says, Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, as you were saying earlier. So Jacob here did recognize that who he was fighting with. And my life is preserved. Just as he crossed over Peniel, the sun rose on him and he limped on his hip. Peniel is actually Peniel. It was just a different spelling. So Peniel means the face of God. The face of God. So basically, Jacob was recognizing that that wrestling match was with God himself. Whether it was Jesus or God himself, we don't know. The Bible doesn't clearly say, but what we know is it was God. And Jacob recognized it. The one curious thing here is that in the Old Testament is very rare examples of men actually speaking face to face with God. There's very rare examples. This is one. The other one is Abraham. The other one is Moses, but Moses didn't even get to talk face to face. Moses just got the shoulders and on the back. Moses only got the shoulders and the back. He couldn't see his face because for some reason God told him, no, if you see me, you're going to die. But yet with Jacob and Abraham, yeah, we can have a conversation face to face, no problem. Although that didn't happen all the time, whereas with Moses, he was having constant conversations with God. But the thing is that Jacob understood that he was speaking and fighting with God. Genesis 32:30 records Jacob's naming the place Peniel, saying, "Indeed, I have seen God's face to face, and yet my life was spared." This encounter leaves a lasting impact on Jacob, both physically and spiritually. The limp with which Jacob walks serves as a perpetual reminder of his encounter with God. The event is commemorated by the Israelites, who refrain from eating the tendon attached to the hip socket, as noted in Genesis 32:32. In conclusion, the account of Jacob's wrestling with God is a profound narrative that speaks to the human condition and the divine-human relationship. It highlights themes of struggle, transformation, and the pursuit of God's blessing, offering rich insight into the nature of faith and the character of God. So, what can we take about this? Just like trying to land the plane now? The identity that they sold you on is not who you are. That's not who you are. You are who God said you are. Your identity is in Christ. The Bible says, Christ in you, the hope of glory. If we are in Christ, we are no longer living under our own identity. We are now under the identity of what God called us. So if you were a Jacob, if you identified yourself as a cheater, or maybe that was not your identity, maybe it was something else, loser, or whatever the heck they told you in the past. You said it. God calls us Israel, those who fight with God. And not that we're fighting, having a match against God, but God fights for us and gives us strength. And we're fighting with God. So it's no longer our own battle. The problem with Jacob that he was always fighting things all alone. He was trying to solve things all by himself. What God was telling him by that change of name is that you ain't got to fight this alone anymore. You fight with me. If you fight with me, things are going to go more smoothly. Now you're limping for the rest of your life, but it's because I want you to remember that now on you fight with me and you depend on me. You don't depend on your strength. You don't depend on your own 2 feet. You depend on my strength. You depend on me, and now both of us are going to get it done. You cooperate with me, I will fight for you. It's not that we're docile and not doing anything. It's that we do what we got to do, but when there's the point that we cannot do any further, we rest up to that point and let it God be God from that point on. But there are things that we have to do. It's not calling to say like, oh, God is going to take care of me, so I ain't got to work no more. I ain't saying that. I didn't say that. Nah, you got to work. Now, the problem is that there's sometimes too much month on the end of your money, you know? Sometimes you do what you got to do, but it ain't enough. What are you going to do? You can do extra hours and whatnot. And you can handle your business to the point that you can. But even so, maybe sometimes it's not that enough either. So what are you going to do at that point? Well, if you've done everything that you know how to do, you're not going to do something illegal. So you have no other choice but to wait and depend on God. That's one example. But what I'm trying to say is that let us depend more on God and not on our own strength, not on our own intellect, in our own wits. Because there's a limit to what we can do. But with God, there is no limit. There is no limit. And he wants to bless us, and not just financially, but he wants to restore our soul. And then from there on, grow and grow and grow in every branch and area in our lives. Amen. That is it. God bless. I don't know if Blue is going to be